Because this is a movie that was made in 1937 and is being remade in 2024, and you sit here moaning about the differences between those two movies like 1937 were the glory days.
Critical Drinker, your YouTube video on the trailer has now been viewed nearly 2.5 million times, and you said the new Dwarfs look is nightmare fuel. Can you explain that for us, please?
Yeah, so what they've obviously tried to do is retain the artistic aesthetic of the cartoon from the 1930s, but transpose it into a live-action movie, and it just looks horrific. It's so out of place. And when you see them dancing next to Rachel Zegler, who's an actual human actor, it just looks awful. They don't match up. They're deep into the uncanny valley. It is the worst possible choice they could have made. It would have been so much...
So, here we are with Disney's latest blunder, the decision to replace the beloved Seven Dwarfs with some pretty lackluster CGI creations. Enter Critical Drinker, who's not holding back. He jumps right in, questioning how Disney's so-called virtue signaling is really messing up our favorite classics. Fans are calling this move a colossal failure, and the shill defending it is left scrambling for excuses. On one side, you have Critical Drinker, a YouTube commentator known for his honest takes on Hollywood's missteps. He's the guy asking all the right questions. Did Peter Dinklage's comments really cost dwarf actors their jobs? What's up with the CGI dwarfs that have fans so fired up? Is this really progress, or is Disney just trying to tick boxes while ignoring the people who matter? Will Disney ever learn? Disney's Snow White remake has caught a lot of heat, not just from fans but also from franchises like Star Wars, Marvel, and the Rings of Power. These critics are shining a light on how corporate pandering and shallow wokeness have been ruining storytelling for years. Honestly, have you ever seen a film that gets it so wrong and faces such backlash? From the cringe-worthy leaked photos to a totally updated premise that feels forced, and those awkward interviews with the lead actress, it's a lot to unpack. Then there's James Barr, a guy who often defends Hollywood's questionable choices, from the divisive Last Jedi to Mulan's issues. He seems a bit scared of offending Peter Dinklage, but isn't Snow White just a perfect example of how modern entertainment can go sideways? It's turning into something barely recognizable from the original, all in a bid to please everyone. Barr tries to justify Disney's choice to swap out the iconic Seven Dwarfs for CGI, saying it's all about being inclusive and progressive. But what about the voices from the dwarf acting community? What about the fans? Replacing the dwarfs isn't just about giving the story a modern twist, it's about taking away opportunities from actors who have historically relied on roles like these. That's exactly what Critical Drinker points out. Disney's attempt to look progressive has actually hurt the very people they're claiming to support. Fans aren't buying it. And let's talk about the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon, where non-dwarf actors are playing dwarfs. Why aren't we talking more about that? It's kind of wild that we're focused solely on Disney here. Sure, we could debate Rings of Power for hours, but right now Snow White is the hot topic. What should I say to those defending it? Are they really convinced that Disney is trying to be more inclusive? After all, CGI has been a part of countless films, and while many actors have played dwarfs without causing a stir, the outrage here seems to stem from Disney's misguided attempts at being woke. But let's get real, nobody at Disney is actually improving the world with this remake. Why do we keep tossing around the term outrage? The film has become a punchline, a mix of all the worst traits of modern filmmaking. Imagine a Snow White film without any dwarfs. Sounds ridiculous, right? And then you have the fairest of them all at odds with Gelato, who's more envious of Rachel Zegler. What's even going on with that storyline? Critical Drinker really goes after the Disney shill's weak defense of this whole situation. James Barr is just clinging to those stale corporate talking points, insisting that this move is all about progress and inclusivity. But is Disney really a leader in moral advancement? Drinker isn't letting Barr off easy. He calls out the obvious hypocrisy in these buzzwords, tearing apart Disney's pitiful attempt at virtue signaling. This isn't just about being inclusive, it's downright offensive to real dwarf actors who depend on these roles for their livelihoods. In their rush to look woke, Disney has taken away significant roles from dwarf actors who have always relied on characters like the Seven Dwarfs for income and visibility. Drinker highlights how Disney's efforts to appease a small group have actually harmed a whole community. The real scandal isn't about pushing boundaries, it's about a pretty despicable move disguised as progress. People are really upset about Disney's approach to character representation in its live-action adaptations. Instead of genuinely fostering inclusivity, the studio seems to be opting for unconvincing CGI creations that just aren't resonating with viewers. Are they really enhancing the film's authenticity? Or are they just frustrating those who care about media quality? Critical voices like Drinker have pointed out that Disney's attempts at virtue signaling have backfired spectacularly, erasing the real actors who could have brought depth and complexity to the film. In their quest for progress, it feels like they've done the exact opposite. After nearly a year of silence, Disney finally dropped the first trailer for the film. But rather than quieting the critics, this reveal has only highlighted the same glaring issues that sparked the backlash in the first place. The trailer is overflowing with garish colors and features an overproduced soundtrack that feels more like a marketing gimmick than a sincere effort to revive a classic. What's your take on all this? Are you ready to jump into the debate over Disney's latest misstep? The representation of the story suffers significantly when the so-called edgy music accompanying the visuals feels not only misplaced, but also resembles a desperate attempt to inject modernity into a narrative that truly requires more than superficial changes. In its pursuit of progress, Disney seems to have traded authenticity for what can only be described as soulless pandering. The CGI characters lack the warmth and humanity that real actors naturally bring to their roles, leaving viewers with hollow representations that fail to connect on any meaningful level. This results in an experience that feels more like a corporate product than a heartfelt story. As Drinker articulates in his scathing critique, this shift away from genuine representation has not only alienated longtime fans, but has also highlighted the studio's failure to deliver a compelling narrative. The ramifications of this approach extend far beyond artistic choices made in the film. By sidelining real actors in favor of digital representations, Disney inadvertently sends a message that authenticity is secondary to a corporate agenda. This move undermines the hard work and dedication of countless performers who have honed their craft, contributing to the rich storytelling tradition that Disney has long championed. In erasing these actors, the studio risks losing the very essence of the stories it aims to tell, opting instead for a cookie-cutter formula that prioritizes visual spectacle over character development and narrative depth. The backlash against Disney's latest project reflects not only a critique of artistic decisions, but also a growing discontent with the industry's approach to representation and inclusivity. Many fans are calling for authentic portrayals that celebrate the unique stories and experiences of individuals, rather than relying on CGI shortcuts that dilute the complexity of human emotions. The frustration among audiences underscores a broader desire for meaningful representation that resonates on a personal level, rather than superficial nods to diversity that lack substance. As the conversation surrounding this film continues to unfold, it becomes evident that Disney's attempts to navigate the delicate landscape of representation have not yielded the desired results. Instead of being celebrated for their progressive stance, they find themselves facing criticism from all sides. The disconnect between their intentions and the audience's reception reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what genuine representation entails. In conclusion, Disney's decision to replace talented actors with uninspired CGI figures represents a troubling trend in the industry, one that prioritizes visual effects over authentic storytelling. As the critical Drinker points out, this misguided approach not only fails to deliver on the promise of progress, but also risks alienating audiences who long for depth, complexity, and meaningful representation. In an era where authenticity matters more than ever, Disney must reassess its priorities and embrace the richness that real actors bring to their narratives. Only then can they hope to rebuild the trust of their audience and create films that truly resonate. Until that happens, the critical backlash will likely continue to grow, leaving Disney to grapple with the consequences of its choices in an ever-evolving entertainment landscape. Hey everyone, so let's talk about Disney's recent moves regarding the portrayal of dwarf characters in their live-action remake of Snow White. It's been quite the hot topic, especially within the dwarf acting community, where many folks are feeling pretty let down by the company that's supposed to champion diversity and representation. This backlash isn't just about a creative shift, it raises some serious concerns about how these choices are affecting real-life actors in a community that's already marginalized. The big issue seems to be Disney's decision to swap out traditional dwarf roles for CGI characters. A lot of people see this as dodging responsibility rather than making a progressive step. For many dwarf actors, it's not just about losing job opportunities, it feels like a real betrayal. These talented performers have dedicated their lives to perfecting their craft and contributing to the stories Disney has long celebrated. So as they watch their roles replaced by digital avatars, some even calling them CGI creations, the frustration only grows. Instead of feeling like a step forward, it's more like an erasure of their identities and contributions. And then there's the way Snow White is portrayed in this new adaptation. The dwarves come off as subservient to her, which just doesn't sit right. They give her shelter, food, and warmth, but she seems to take it all for granted and expects even more from them. This raises some uncomfortable questions about power and agency, making it seem like a regression in how these characters are represented. They deserve to be shown as equals with unique stories, not just as background characters. Critics are quick to point out that this new depiction plays into some pretty harmful stereotypes, suggesting that those who are different are there to serve the so-called worthy protagonists. These portrayals can really reinforce negative stereotypes instead of challenging them. The disappointment from the acting community runs deep. It reflects a broader desire for genuine representation and respect for the individuals behind these characters. As the backlash continues, it looks like Disney's attempt to reshape public perception might have backfired big time. Their goal to modernize a story criticized for its outdated themes has landed them in a tricky spot where they've sacrificed the original charm and complexity of the narrative in the name of political correctness. Audience reactions? Not so enthusiastic. Many feel like the studio's efforts have only highlighted their missteps. If the trailer was meant to spark interest in a franchise struggling to connect with today's audiences, it seems to have done the opposite, leading some to wonder if it's time to rethink the whole project. In a world where authenticity matters more than ever, the portrayal of dwarf characters in Snow White stands out as a glaring example of what can happen when political agendas overshadow storytelling. This whole situation raises important questions about the intersection of politics, narrative integrity, and common sense. It might be time for Disney to reevaluate their approach, because they've not only alienated dedicated fans but also the community they claim to uplift. Ultimately, it's essential for companies like Disney to realize how their creative choices impact marginalized communities. By choosing CGI over real actors, they've inadvertently created a divide, leaving dwarf actors feeling sidelined in a narrative that, at its core, is about more than just magic and fantasy. The artistic community deserves a platform that values their contributions instead of reducing them to mere pixels in a digital landscape. This situation is a powerful reminder of the need for genuine representation in storytelling, ensuring every voice is heard and respected. In the ongoing discourse surrounding Disney's recent remake of Snow White, critics like Drinker have emerged as prominent voices, delivering sharp and uncompromising assessments of the film's decisions. One of the most controversial choices was the removal of the 7 dwarfs, who have been replaced with CGI characters. Drinker argues that this move was not a genuine attempt to protect dwarf actors or enhance inclusivity, but rather a strategic maneuver to avoid backlash from a particularly vocal minority. This protective stance, however, has not achieved its intended goal. Instead, it has led to significant alienation among Disney's loyal fan base and has left a community of actors, specifically those who identify as little people without essential roles they desperately needed to showcase their talents. Drinker pulls no punches when critiquing the Snow White remake, branding it a complete disaster. He posits that the film has stumbled at every conceivable level, from its storytelling to the representation of its characters. He believes that the core of the story has been diluted, rendering it a shadow of the original. Critics defending this iteration often cite progress and modernization as justifications for the changes made, but Drinker is quick to dismiss these arguments as superficial and unconvincing. He contends that the remake comes off as a hollow reinterpretation of a beloved classic, lacking the depth and charm that made the original resonate with audiences for generations. Moreover, this reimagined Snow White misses the mark in terms of its connection to the original narrative. it feels more like a disjointed attempt at relevance rather than a faithful homage to the source material. The film appears to prioritize political correctness over compelling storytelling, resulting in a production that fails to engage viewers on an emotional level. Ultimately, this misguided approach not only undermines the legacy of Disney's animated classic, but also risks alienating the very audiences it seeks to attract. By attempting to navigate the complexities of modern societal expectations without a solid foundation, Disney finds itself in a precarious position, facing criticism from both fans of the original and those advocating for authentic representation. In the end, the Snow White remake exemplifies a broader trend in Hollywood, one that prioritizes appeasing vocal critics over crafting narratives that resonate deeply with audiences. So, in the end, this remake is a creative and ethical misstep, showing just how far Disney has strayed from its roots by prioritizing virtue signaling over authentic storytelling. The audience is left grappling with a harsh reality. Disney's attempt to avoid backlash has led to alienation, anger, and a film that feels unwatchable. Instead of moving forward, they've taken a step back, causing more harm than good. To wrap this up, Drinker poses a thought-provoking question: is Disney really making progress, or are they just erasing classic stories to appease a small minority? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinions in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you stay updated on all things entertainment. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.